There's a version of risk that every construction business owner carries that they don't talk about very often. It's not the obvious kind, not the risks that you can point to, not the thing that shows up on an insurance policy or in a contract clause. It's the ambient weight of knowing on any given day that something could go wrong that you didn't see coming. A crew member on a roof, a subcontractor on a ladder without the right coverage, a draw that hasn't landed while payroll is due on Friday, a client who signed a contract but doesn't understand what they agreed to, a wall that's been opened up and revealed something that nobody anticipated. Every builder carries some version of this, and most of them manage it in the same way, reactively. Something goes wrong, and they deal with it. They handle the claim, they absorb the costs, they fight the dispute, they survive the incident, and then they go back to work and carry the same weight into the next project. Welcome back to Brickonomics, the business of building. My name is Nick Scroggs, and this episode is about replacing that reactive weight with something that's designed. Over the last 3 episodes, we've covered the 3 major systems inside the Contracts and Risk series: how to structure contracts that create shared understanding, how to build payment systems that protect cash flow, and how to use change orders to protect your margin. Each of those systems addresses a specific category of risk. But what I've learned from running this business, and sometimes the hard way, is that no single system protects you. Insurance alone doesn't do it. Great people alone don't do it. Good contracts alone don't do it. Strong cash reserves alone don't do it. It's the blanket, all of them working together, that lets you sleep at night. That's what this episode is about. Not any one risk, but the whole picture. I want to start with a category of risks that most builders don't think about until the bill arrives. Subcontractors' insurance, specifically workers' compensation. When you hire a subcontractor to work on your job site, they're supposed to carry their own workers' comp coverage. That's their obligation, their employees, their coverage, their premiums. But here's what actually happens. Subcontractors, especially smaller operations, sometimes let their workers' comp lapse. Not always intentionally. Sometimes it's a missed payment. Sometimes it's a renewal that slipped through the cracks. Sometimes they drop it deliberately because the premium is expensive and they're trying to cut costs. You don't find out about it while they're on your job site. You find out about it at the end of the year when your own workers' comp insurance gets audited. And here's the part that hits hard. The insurance company holds you, the general contractor, accountable for uninsured subcontractors who worked on your projects. If a sub's coverage lapsed while they were on your site, their exposure becomes your exposure. Their premiums become your premium. You get billed for it at the audit. We've been hit with year-end audit surprises of tens of thousands of dollars for coverage gaps that we didn't create. Tens of thousands of dollars you didn't budget for, didn't plan for, and couldn't have predicted because the risk was invisible until the auditor found it. The fix requires 2 things. First, we now verify workers' comp and general liability coverage for every subcontractor before they start work on any project. Certificates of insurance on file with expiration dates tracked. Second, and this is the piece that actually gives the system teeth, our project management software monitors insurance expirations automatically. When a subcontractor's coverage lapses, this system flags it immediately and triggers a payment withhold. We do not release payment until that subcontractor has provided proof of renewed coverage. The logic is simple. If their lapse ultimately results in us paying their premium at audit, we're using their money that we withheld rather than absorbing it out of our own margin. This will not catch every gap. Some lapses happen between the time you verify and the time the work is done, but the difference between having the system and not having it is the difference between a predictable insurance cost and tens of thousands of dollars in surprises in December. The broader principle is one that applies to almost every category of risk in construction. The risk you don't know about is the most dangerous kind. It doesn't show up until the audit, the claim, or the invoice, and by then, the cost is already locked in. I want to tell you about a moment on one of our job sites that I still think about today. We were working on an older home, a renovation project that involved significant demo. The crew was taking down interior walls, opening up the floor plan. Standard work for a remodel of that scope. The ceiling in this particular section of the house was plaster. Old plaster. Heavy, layered, attached to lath in a way that had held for decades, but was structurally dependent on the walls surrounding it in ways that weren't immediately obvious. One of my supervisors had been in the room inspecting the demo progress. He walked through, checked the work, made some notes, and walked out. Seconds after he left that room, the entire plaster ceiling collapsed. Hundreds of pounds of plaster and lath came down in one mass onto the floor where he'd been standing just seconds earlier. No one was hurt by the narrowest possible margin, but that moment changed how I think about safety on our job sites. Not because I read a manual, not because an inspector told us to do something different, but because I could physically picture what would have happened if my supervisor had stayed in that room for 10 seconds longer. Before that incident, safety was something that we took seriously in the general sense. We had protocols, we had conversations, we reminded people to be careful, but it was managed by instinct and culture rather than by a system. After that, we built an actual system. We partnered with our local builder's mutual representative, or our insurance provider in this area, and asked for help. They provided more resources than I expected: safety training videos, reference manuals, job site safety scoring cards, hazard identification materials. All of it became part of our initial training for our new employees and our ongoing development for existing team members. But the most significant change was creating a dedicated role: the safety and job site quality technician. This person's job is to walk every active job site once per week and produce a safety and quality score. They're looking at housekeeping, fall protection, PPE compliance, tool storage, material handling, site access, and a dozen other indicators that tell you whether the job site is being managed to the standards that you've set. Those scores then flow back to our director of construction. They become part of how we evaluate our project managers' and supervisors' performance. Safety isn't just a conversation anymore, it's a metric, and metrics get managed in a way that conversations don't. There's definitely a builder listening to this right now who thinks they're too small for a dedicated safety role, and they might be right. Not every company needs a full-time position for it, but every company needs someone whose job includes walking the sites, producing a score, and reporting what they find. Even if that person does three other things, even if the visit is only 30 minutes, the discipline of a structured observation is what separates a safety culture from a safety intention, because safety intentions don't stop plaster from falling on people's heads. Most builders think about risk management as a cost: insurance premiums, safety equipment, compliance time, administrative overhead. What they miss is that risk management done well is actually a compounding investment. Start with the most direct connection. Companies with clean safety records and no significant claims pay lower workers' comp premiums. That's not a theory, that's how insurance math works. Your experience modification rate, the multiplier that adjusts your premium based on your claims history, rewards companies that don't generate losses. Over time, a clean record produces meaningfully lower premiums than a company the same size with a history of incidents. Lower premiums improve your financial model. Better financial health gives you capacity to invest in the systems that keep the record clean: the safety technician role, the training programs, the scoring system. The investment funds the outcome, and the outcome reduces the costs. It compounds. The same cycle operates with subcontractor management. When your insurance tracking system is working, certificates verified, lapses flagged, payments withheld, you stop absorbing surprise audit costs. That predictability in your insurance expense improves your overhead model, which improves your pricing accuracy, which improves your margins. Each piece feeds the next. There's also a human dimension that matters. When you build a genuine culture of safety, not a poster on the wall, but a scorecard, measured and managed by people, your people know that you care about them coming home in the same condition that they arrived. That changes how they show up. It changes how they feel about the company. And practically, it means fewer injuries, fewer missed days, fewer worker comp claims, and more consistent production. Healthy people on safe job sites are more productive, more reliable, and more loyal. And that's not a soft benefit, that's a direct financial outcome. Companies that don't worry about OSHA violations because they know their sites are being managed don't carry that ambient stress into their leadership decisions. That matters more than most people realize. When you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering whether today is the day that something goes wrong, you make better decisions about everything else. The honest admission underneath all of this: no system catches everything. People are going to have bad days. Subcontractors are going to cut corners. Unexpected conditions are going to appear. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is being covered enough that when one thing slips through, it doesn't take your business down. This is the closing episode of the Contracts and Risk series, and I want to take a moment to show you how everything that we've covered across these 4 episodes fits together. Because the individual systems are useful, but the real power is in the blanket. Contracts protect you legally. In episode 9, we talked about the contract as a business strategy, not a form. The contract determines who carries risk, how decisions get made, and what conversations are appropriate when reality shows up. The contract playbook aligns your internal team around what was signed. The expectations agreement aligns your client. Together, they create a shared understanding that prevents disputes before they start because both parties know what they agreed to before the first nail goes in. When a dispute does arise, the contract is your foundation. Without a solid one, every conflict becomes a negotiation from scratch. With one, you have a document that both parties signed, understood, and agreed to. Payment systems protect your cash flow. In episode 10, we talked about why most builders get paid late and how to fix it. Monthly billing creates predictability. Invoice confidence ensures the billing conversation is a transaction, not a negotiation. The disputed balance protocol keeps small questions from holding up large payments, and the job stop gives the entire system its teeth. Without cash flow protection, every other system is fragile. You can have the best contract in the industry and still go under if the money doesn't flow. Change orders protect your margins. In episode 11, we talked about where most profit is actually lost. A complete change order captures not just cost, but time, carrying costs, supervision, design fees, and additional calendar days, all with a client signature. Without change order discipline, you earn the margin in the contract and then give it back one undocumented change at a time. Safety systems protect your people. That's what we covered today. The near miss that catalyzed the system, the safety and job site quality technician, the weekly scoring, the training programs, the culture that emerges when safety is measured rather than assumed. Without safety systems, your most important asset, the people who build everything, are exposed to preventable risk every single day. Insurance is the umbrella. Insurance sits on top of it all. It covers what the other systems can't prevent. The incident that happens despite the safety culture, the claim that arises despite the solid contract, the loss that occurs despite the financial discipline. But insurance only works well when the systems underneath it are doing their job. A company with sloppy operations and frequent claims pays more for coverage, gets less favorable terms, and carries higher deductibles. A company with tight operations, clean records, and well-managed risk pays less and gets more. Here's the connection most builders miss. The tighter your operations, the less you pay in insurance. The higher your margins, the more capacity you have to invest in safety. The healthier and safer your people are, the more productive they are and the fewer days that they miss. Each system feeds the others. When one piece is missing, the others strain. Great safety with bad contracts still produces disputes. Great contracts with no payment systems still produce cash flow problems. Great insurance with sloppy operations still produces preventable claims. That's why when no single system protects you, the blanket does. In late 2024, Hurricane Helene hit our area. Our building took roughly 3 feet of water. We lost equipment, we lost tools, we lost inventory. We lost the building itself temporarily, as it had to be gutted and restored before we could fully operate out of it again. The total cost was approximately $150,000, not including the revenue that we didn't generate while we were shut down, not including the time our team spent on recovery instead of in production, not including the disruption to our clients' projects or the cascading schedule impacts across our entire portfolio. $150,000 could have put us out of business, but it didn't. Not because we were lucky, not because the damage wasn't serious, but because the systems we had built over the years of learning often the hard way, gave us enough resilience to absorb it. Insurance coverage that was adequate because we had reviewed it proactively, not just accepted whatever the default policy was offered, but because we actually sat down with our provider and made sure that the coverage matched the exposure. Cash reserves that existed because our financial systems were sound. The job costing, the overhead model, the billing systems. All of that discipline had built a financial cushion over time that was available when we needed it most. Contracts with clients that protected our obligations during force majeure. Language that existed because we had learned from COVID and from the material escalation experience that clauses that you need to have in crisis need to be written in and explained before the crisis arrives. A team that knew how to operate because the roles and processes and decision making frameworks were defined, not necessarily personality dependent. When everything was disrupted, the team didn't need to tell them what to do next. The structure told them. And the structure even held when the building didn't. The hurricane didn't test one system, it tested them all simultaneously. And the only reason we survived it intact, financially, operationally, and as a team, is that the blanket was in place before it was needed. You can't build the blanket during the crisis. It has to exist before the crisis arrives. And if it doesn't, the crisis becomes the thing that determines whether the business actually survives. Here's what I want you to take away from this series. Risk management is not a decision, it's a discipline. It's contracts that create shared understanding before disputes can form. It's payment systems that protect cash flow before it gets squeezed. It's change orders that protect margin before it gets given away. It's safety systems that protect people before somebody gets hurt. And it's insurance that covers what all of those other systems can't. None of them work together alone. All of them work together. The builders who sleep well at night are not the ones with the fewest problems. They're the ones who have built enough structure around their business that problems don't become existential threats. A bad month doesn't become a bad year. A claim doesn't become a crisis. A hurricane doesn't become the end of your story. You'll never eliminate risk in construction. The nature of our work won't allow it. You're building things that have never existed before, with teams of people in physical environments that change every day for clients who are navigating one of the most expensive and stressful decisions of their lives. Risk is built into our business. But you can design a company where risk is managed, measured, and survivable, where the systems are strong enough that when the one thing that you didn't see coming finally arrives, and it will arrive, the business absorbs it rather than breaks underneath it. That's the difference between a business that endures and one that's always one bad month away from collapse. In the next series, we're moving into operations and roles. How work actually moves through a construction company, how to build leadership layers, how to delegate without losing quality, and how to create a business that doesn't require the owner to be the answer to every question. We've built the financial foundation and the risk protection. The next question is how to build the organization that makes all of it sustainable. Thanks for listening to Brickonomics, and I'll see you in the next one.